All right, and Amanda and Lindsay here with you for support. And I've just pressed the record button. So folks in our breakout room, welcome. Welcome to the South Coast. And know that this will be recorded. And if you're not comfortable with that, this would be the time to leave. And I think maybe just a moment more or two, and we can go ahead and dive right into these questions. All right, let's do it.
Perfect. So hello, everyone. I am Amanda Van Diggelen. I am one of the environmental scientists with the Department of Fish and Wildlife's Marine Protected Areas Management Project. And I am here with Lindsay from Ocean Protection Council. And we're just here representing our respective agencies. And it looks like we also have Mike Stefanik with law enforcement from Department of Fish and Wildlife with us as well. So what we are hoping to have from these breakout groups is to just hear your perspectives and questions if you have them, but perspectives on what you would be interested in seeing in this report, this Decadal Management Review report. And so jumping into just the first question of what role would you like your community to play in the MPA management program moving forward? And what I can do is I will go ahead and share my screen so we can just see this. Let me see if I can share my screen. Oh, okay. So whoever's hosting the room, it might be you, Jocelyn. You might have to share your screen just so everybody can see notes as you take them, make sure that their perspectives are being shared as you are logging those notes. And for anyone, you can raise your hand or you can send a message through the chat trying to meet you where you're at. We have, I believe the breakout rooms are going to be at least 40 to 50 minutes, so we have plenty of time to hear all of your contributions. Perfect. We can see that, Jocelyn. So yes, can see the typing too.
Maybe make it a little bit bigger.
Yeah, that would be great if you can zoom in. Thanks,
Will
Wayne.
do. Is that my friend Wayne over there?
Can you, instead of zooming in on the text, do you think you can actually zoom in on the page itself in the top left? Perfect.
Perfect.
Yes. Wonderful. So, like I said, first question, we're just going to go straight off the bat with that first bullet point that's bolded right now. What role would you like? I'm going to just wait for Jocelyn to get herself set up. Perfect. So what role would you like your community representing recreational fishermen for the onus of this meeting? So whether it be a specific species, like Chen Chen had mentioned right before these breakout rooms started, or your specific type of fishing, the gear you're interested in, what kind of community you identify with in terms of the recreational fishing community, what role would you like your community to play in the MPA management program moving forward?
Hey, Amanda, I think that's kind of a tough question because as far as the MPA management program is concerned, the recreational anglers, if they're not participating in CCFRP, they can't participate, right? Other than that, or in the collaborative efforts. If we participate in the MPA collaborative groups, but then it's not really the angling community participating in fishing or reviewing, no scientific collections being done other than CCFRP.
So CCFRP, yes, is a great example of an active way to actually like utilize your skill as a recreational angler to contribute to the management program, and also the collaboratives, like you said, and then traditionally at Fish and Game Commission meetings. But we're also looking for if you think that you are leading a recreational community group that would benefit from a one-on-one meeting with the department, where we could go and provide information to help share more information about the community or about the report in a more intentional or focused manner to your community. We're just looking for, I guess, a response in the sense of what does your community even feel like they know what's been going on? Like, do we need to go back to the beginning of trying to even get more messaging out there about marine protected areas? Or do we need to work more towards involving, trying to solicit research projects similar to CCFRP to involve fishing groups? Just open-ended question if you've thought about ways beyond that, which we already have, to be involved that we could consider, I think is a different way to frame this question.
I think there's an opportunity for anglers to participate through citizen science.
Okay.
And I think that there has been a better understanding or I don't know how to put it. I think the department has been more open to it because they know that they're lacking the data sets. So we need a process to qualify citizen scientry to be added into the data sets of the MPAs, or inside or outside the MPAs.
Okay.
A good example that we just had was the Grunion Run potential proposed regulation changes. There isn't any real data been collected by the department, and what they used and showed to us was citizen science data. Whether we agree with it or not, it's there.
Mm-hmm.
And the department's willing to accept it in this case. But up until now, that really hasn't been accepted. It's only been programs, formal programs like CCFRP, correct? So how do we create a process to allow programs to be developed?
Okay, or even validate or work towards kind of affirming programs that already exist. So in the case of the Grunion example you just provided, that program has existed, not used before, using now. So if there are programs that exist, how can we work to have those programs essentially confirm that their data is scientifically sound?
The data is good enough to be utilized.
Got it.
Right? That we can all agree on what the process and procedures to qualify the citizen data or procedures that they want to use to collect data to help through this type of process review potential opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
If I can build on that too, Wayne, I think, streamlining the methods that people can participate in citizen science projects. So whether that's reporting through an app or providing, like a relatively easy method, but that is going to qualify and is going to follow those procedures to make sure that it's sound data. But that's something that's going to be, essentially available to anyone that's interested, which is going to help facilitate that data collection to the department. So just, second what Wayne said there and build on it as far as just ease of use and streamlining that communication.
Okay, perfect. And then just to kind of build off of that comment in terms of connecting with the recreational community about, say, if we're working towards building these streamlined efforts, what is the best way to then broadcast that information? Do you, as recreational anglers, do you find that you go to the department website enough so that you would find, like if we posted it on our department website, here are new citizen science ways that you could be involved? Is that an easy way to connect with your specific community? Or is it better to have point people that we could then email and then have them disseminate the information through, say, fishing groups or blogs that they themselves are active participants on, just out of curiosity to best communicate with recreational anglers? Traditionally, what do any of you have recommendations on what works best for this group?
There is no one size fits all on any of that. And we found that out through the strategic group to just pull these meetings together.
Right.
I mean, that's a lesson learned. Everybody has their own niche and their own avenue. We used everything from email, social media, broadcasting, radio, print ad, you name it. And each of our groups tried to get the message out. So, and then there's groups like our CCA Cal who then pushes it out to other groups, right? All the fishing groups, BHA, Fin and Forage, whatever, all of them. We pushed it out to everybody to disseminate to their groups. So I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think you have to use all avenues. I mean, the people that are engaged, you see the same people, right? Fish and Game Commission, Coastal Commission, OPC meetings, they're always the same major groups who are trying to represent their areas. So we all try to work to get a message out to everybody.
Perfect. Lindsay, do you have anything to add? I actually need to go turn on my light. My room is slowly darkening and I just need to go hit the light switch really quick.
Yeah, sure. Can everybody hear me okay? I'm assuming that's a yes. Okay, great. I know this isn't a particular question here, but I'm curious if there's certain data sources, like building from what Amanda was just saying, data sources that you track more closely than others. What ones kind of rise to the top as the most important data sources that you track for MPA specifically?
I think that's a tough one just to sift through and to figure out, like what are the best data sources. And I think that kind of came up on the first part of this presentation, that maybe just some more information on, here's some recommended data sources. And I know that you sent me some great ones that sent me researching for quite a while, but it brought me to things that I hadn't previously found when I had reached out. So, I think, maybe just trying to, again, go through the different channels, as Wayne mentioned, all the different avenues and different NGOs and CCA Cal and the different groups to say like, hey, here's the data that we have right now. And here are the sources that we recommend and that we think is like the most accurate, the most up-to-date best practices. And just like sending that out a little bit more and make it a little bit easier for folks to find, because I've heard that refrain from a lot of members and just colleagues and friends that, it's like, oh, I can't find any data. I can't find any data. And it's out there. I think it's just, you have to kind of like dig for it a little bit.
Yeah, I was expecting to have a more consolidated area within the department or Fish and Game or somebody to consolidate the data points. Like we participate in the CCFRP program, and some do a better job at annual summaries than others. But you can't really just find that data. You got to have their link to get to that data if they're providing it. So here's a good problem, or here's a problem that we found, that we're going into a 10-year review. And the first question is, where's the data? And you're like, well, they're still consolidating it. We don't know where it's all at. They're still working on it. So we're all going into this review blind, not knowing there should already be trends. There already should be the report card of what we all agree on, how this should be reviewed, and they're just going to put in the data points now, right? That's how it should have gone. That report card is set. Here's how we're going to measure success or failure, and then we just grade it. But that's not what's happening. What's happening is it's being made up on the fly, or somebody else is making those decisions on what that report card looks like. And that's kind of unfortunate. That's not what we expected from the process.
Got it. So just finding a way to consolidate, make it readily available, almost
Transparent.
yeah. And I think part of the fact of what you're saying is very much true, that we are still figuring this out as this is our very first decadal management review. And just speaking to the past, I'm not sure how familiar everybody is, but the State of the Region reports that were put out that looked at the first 5 years of data after MPA implementation. Those were done usually like a year or two after that 5-year period. So we're in the midst of trying to do a 10-year review at the 10-year anniversary date. So it's a little bit of a cart before the horse, that we're trying to say all of the things that we are hoping to say in the report without actually being able to tell you this is what we are going to be able to say in the report, is essentially what's happening. So the benefit is we can have these conversations about what you would like to see. We already have an idea of what we're planning to work through, but we want to be extremely conscious and intentional about making sure we have these conversations so that we're not just making a report that we already mapped out in our mind, but we're making a report that it serves our stakeholders, it serves the public, and it gives you the information that you are seeking out. And I think that point that you're making of what I'm hearing is that you would like to be able to see the data live online in real time of they did another survey last weekend, and here's the next set of data points that go with that.
I think also just is, Wayne's point partially is, understanding what are the metrics for success. So not just, we want to see the data, but, what is the metric, like how are we measuring success? And is that, what factors are we just talking about, mass of fish? Are we talking about quantities, and then, the social element? Are we, like, how is this impacting people? And like all those different layers that I think that it's just not clear. And so even if the data isn't all there, which obviously it's gonna happen as long as, this project goes on, hopefully forever, like we're going to be collecting data, but just understanding, what the metric of success is.
And that ties in perfectly to the very next bullet point that we were hoping to hear back from you on, is success looks different to everybody. So our task as managers of the network is to work the network towards meeting those 6 goals of the Marine Life Protection Act. But what success is measured as is going to vary from person to person, community to community. And so looking for you to say, if we were to say, how would you define or measure or assess progress towards the Marine Life Protection Act goals? Are you interested in seeing bigger fish here versus here? Are you interested in seeing how state marine reserves compare against state marine conservation areas? So areas that are completely closed versus areas that allow some type of fishing. Or are you interested in seeing how older MPAs have changed, or what are the particular metrics that you're most interested in when you open up a report? You want to see that kind of information presented.
All of the above so far.
Great. Jocelyn, did you get all of that?
It's recorded.
Perfect. You got it.
Yeah, I
But this
agree,
is
especially.
this is part of the problem, right? Because you're asking us what the metrics are after we've already been down the road for 10 years. Then that should have already kind of been defined what the metrics are. How did you measure it if you didn't?
Well, we have a lot of the projects that we've done have focused on those metrics. The point is of this report, we don't want to make it a dictionary. So we can't touch on every single topic or point of each of those metrics. We had the Marine Protection MPA Monitoring Action Plan, which kind of set out those metrics for doing this decadal management review. And so what we're looking for is, of all the metrics that we could possibly look at and analyze and put in the front report rather than an appendix, what is most important to you? What do you want to see front and center? What are you going to say? I want to open up to page 20 of this report and be able to see this graph, be able to see this figure. That's a little bit more in line with probably what that question should get at, is what metrics are most important to you, because we do have a lot of those metrics collected in our data. It's just a matter of, as we're writing and working on this report, we want to make sure that the metrics that you are most interested in seeing as a constituent in that primary report versus an appendix where you're like, I didn't see this. And I'm like, oh, check out Appendix G. And then you're like, how should I have known that? We're looking to try to give you as much of the information you are interested in front and center. Would you agree with that, Lindsay, or do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add. So the metrics and the questions very specifically are outlined in the MPA Monitoring Action Plan, and they've been revised in that scientific evaluation report that came out earlier this year. That being said, it's kind of buried in the appendix, and so, or the appendices, there's multiple. So you can go through and see there are questions like, how does fish abundance vary inside and outside MPAs? And then you can look at the metrics, and then you can actually see which different MPA monitoring groups are addressing that question. Is it CCFRP? Is it the deep reef group? Is it the estuary group or rocky intertidal? So it's there, and it's hard to find. I totally understand that. And so we can do a better job of making that more readily available. It's online, but like I said, it's really buried. So we can help point you to where to find those questions and really dig into those metrics. But I think what Amanda's saying is spot on. There are a lot of them. And so we want to know which ones are most important and which ones to highlight. And some of them we won't be able to answer completely because some MPAs are younger than others. There won't be a signature. And some things like the human dimensions side, we really haven't gotten so far down the line there. So that's very much a work in progress.
Do you want to go in? Oh, am I muted?
No, you're good.
Oh, you can hear me.
Yes.
Lindsay, do you want to go in and type in the resource that folks can
Yes.
go view exactly what you're talking about? And then I'd
Yeah.
love to just suggest that maybe if other folks that we haven't heard from would like to chime in and share, we'd love to get a diversity of thoughts in here. So if we haven't had the chance to hear your voice, would love to invite you to share on these questions or earlier ones. So welcome, and we're about halfway through here.
Hi, I've got a comment or a question. So I'm Nathan. I live in San Diego, and I operate a small nonprofit that's bridging health and wellness and civic ecology. And so I'm involved in various assessments on watershed quality and, just kind of looking at environmental health overall. And so as a recreational fisherman, I'm always out in the water and kind of curious how the impact of various like report cards, for example, like lobster report card, and I fish all over in San Diego. So I'm always trying to find information about where are the lobsters at, right? And as that search kind of happens, I'm looking online for feedback on how should I be approaching my strategies, right? And so I'm curious that with these report card systems, if there's a mechanism by which we're able to look at the success in various zones, because the lobster report card has us, denote which area we're fishing in, obviously method as well. So I'm curious like where that data goes, and if that's something that I can view and say, okay, hey, in Mission Beach, there was only 12 lobsters caught this season versus, in the Del Mar area. So I'm curious about that information, where we can find that type of, detail on the impact of, the reporting, because obviously as we're doing our best to preserve these various, productive spaces, I'm interested on that impact of the, okay, let's preserve this zone because we know it's a breeding ground, and the areas around there, are they inherently seeing more fish taken, or is that something that, again, are we seeing any of these kind of trends, so to speak, in these, the way that these report cards are structured?
Okay, perfect. So just to kind of summarize what you're saying, one, it sounds like you'd be interested in seeing data that is essentially data that's collected by the department, that's required of the fishermen that you are fishing traditionally. In the past, we would have abalone report cards versus now we also have like lobster report cards, and you're interested in seeing department specific data just for the species of lobster. Just
Yeah,
in
absolutely.
general. Okay.
Yep. Because
So-
like if we're having to report on that, I'm just, I want to see some of that data, because as a scientist as well, I'm curious, the impact of that. And because obviously we're trying to collect information. And so, how are we leveraging that?
Okay, so that is a point that I can bring to other programs in the department. So the Marine Protected Areas project could access lobster data. It's a matter of being able to share that data. That is not something that I can speak to. Maybe Mike, if you have a little bit more information on if report card data can be made publicly available, or if it has to be kind of anonymized before it can be shared, or if there is a research, I would have to look to see if we already have a lobster graph for our invertebrate management program. I don't know that answer off the top of my head.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to probably have to join you on that. I know the data is collected. I don't want to speak for that program as to what is readily available and how much. I'm sure there's transparency for sure, but I don't know if that kind of decision or discussion point has been incorporated at this point. It's kind of outside. I mean, we could look at some of that for the law enforcement component to predictive policing, for example. I don't know if we've got that far down the road with the amount of data that's in that program. I know that abalone report card was an important part for some of the decision making we did in the past. But yeah, it's actually a great question. I think that's a great question. I think we need to take that back and see if there's room to consider that going forward.
Yeah, I think that what we could take away from that point that you made, Nathan, right now is that you as a recreational fisherman, you're interested in seeing where the data you're required to submit goes. You would like to see the data that you actually submit as a fisherman used in products. From a marine protected area standpoint, we could probably access that in a certain manner. I know the report card is nuanced in that the levels of detail for the report card can be reporting on anything from as specific as a pier in a given location versus the entirety of like an island. Sometimes like the report card says, I was on Catalina Island, versus in San Diego, you have a lot more specific point detail locations. So it might be a little bit more difficult to disseminate that information on a marine protected area level, but I can at least take away the information that as an angler, you're interested in seeing that the data that you're required to submit when you get your report card or when you apply for your fishing license used in the products that are shared with the public.
So if
And I can
chime-
also
So if I
connect
can chime in
with
here
my-
real quick.
yeah.
That
Oh,
data is
sorry,
on the
one
website.
second. Sorry, Wayne, I'm going to interrupt you. I'm seeing Wendy's hand raised, and then we'll come back to you, Wayne, okay?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to give you one of my highest priorities and topics and issue, and that would be water quality, like the Tijuana Slough and Huntington Beach and, you know, the sewage spills when it rains, and how is that going to be put into the review?
We do work with partners for water quality, so I'll make sure that we capture. I see that Jocelyn added that to the notes, so we'll make sure that that's shared with everybody. So thank you, Wendy.
Now we can go back to Wayne. Thanks, Wayne, for your.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer his question. On your department-wide website, it actually does the reporting by year. It tells you how many report cards were issued, how many reported, what did they fish, where they fished, the average number caught, all that data is up there. It tells you percentage of where the lobsters were caught by location. It tells you the top ones. It tells you the type of gear they used, you know, all the things that we report on that report card. It is listed. So that's already being reported from those cards, okay? It's on your website. You can just Google CDFW lobster report card or reporting. It'll show up.
Perfect. Yeah, no, I'm looking at it now, and it does also include the top 10 locations by percent reported catch and things of that nature. It just took me a little bit to find. I tend to go to the MPA page more often than the lobster page. Thank you, Wayne.
Yep. Thanks so much, Wayne. And didn't mean to interrupt you. Just wanted to make sure that we're hearing all the voices.
Understood.
Oh, cool. Anybody who we haven't heard from want to add in more?
Yeah, this is Laura with Surfrider Foundation. I just wanted to say we're also interested in overall ecosystem health. So things like species abundance and diversity would be really great, as well as anything going on with keystone species, and kind of to go along with the water quality idea, like any other influencing kind of ocean conditions, like if you have any other parameters about salinity or temperature, anything that could influence what's going on, it'd be great to be able to piece those out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Laura. So we have oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just gonna jump in. I just want to, I know you guys touched on this earlier, but I would love to just emphasize the data comparing, you know, your limited take MPAs and your no take MPAs. And then just as another layer, how certain natural events like, you know, sewage spills or oil spills, obviously that one doesn't happen too often, but you know, how that's cross-referenced with, you know, what's happening with ocean conditions and temperatures and, you know, the grand perspective of the ecosystem there. But specifically, yeah, well, you know, what's the efficacy of limited take versus no take, and you know, how that can be extrapolated to the whole system to understand, you know, what the best practices are and what's helping and what's not.
Perfect. Thank you again. We have, we have about 15 minutes left. We've hit on a lot of topics. We have still just one more bullet point of just kind of an open-ended, if there are any other reflections or recommendations regarding MPA management and the role of the ocean community in the broader MPA program. I know we've already touched on the importance of citizen science, the types of data that you are interested in, but is there anything else that you feel as though you would like to share as part of this conversation that just hasn't been brought up yet in terms of what this report is, what you want to see in it, what MPA management is for you, that you just want to speak to while we still have this time in this breakout room?
Yeah, I want to make sure that we see an honest review and that we get a fair crack at seeing the data. That if there's a distinct difference between inside and outside an MPA, we would expect to see that because less pressure. But I think the reverse of that is still also needs to be addressed, that because of the MPAs, RCAs, the rockfish conservation areas, the cowcod conservation areas, and the management practices that are in place, that there's limitations to areas, so the effort is concentrated now. So you can't just say the fishermen are at fault because they're overfishing this area and MPAs, the answer, there's a whole combination of factors and they all need to be put into that review and addressed, right? So we closed down rockfish fishing down in the southern region in January and February, okay? And we have the MPAs, we have the RCAs, and we have all this stuff. And all of a sudden, in the last few years, we have an issue with sculpin. Why? Because that's where the pressure is going to, because they have nothing else to fish for during that time and location. And you concentrate it. So what are we trying to do? We opened up the RCA, right? We opened up from 60 fathom, 75 now to, and more. Okay, but this review, how can it show the effect? Because it just happened. That part needs to be addressed in there, that these are not just a little footnote or whatever. It needs to be addressed that there's always these management changes that we're trying to accomplish with bag changes, bag limits, right? Changing, look at the lingcod, it's been changing up and down. But how does that get addressed within this review?
Okay.
Fairly, right? Fairly.
Great. No, thank you.
It's complex.
So I want to make sure I have what you said, that last piece there, I have that recorded correctly. So you want the management report, the decadal management review report, to address how impacts from other management actions are also.
See, it's one-sided with if you're looking at it in a tunnel and you say, okay, MPAs are doing this, but you're taking things out of context because there's all of those other factors that have been in play for the last 10 years, some of which are have loosened, right? Bag limits have loosened or areas have been loosening up. So we haven't seen the results of some of that yet. We're starting to see them, right? The fishing pressure within a certain area in Southern California Bight has expanded because the area has been opened up. So that you're going to see different results going forward, especially on rockfish.
Got it. Okay. I think I've got it. Thank you, Wayne.
So, hey, Wayne, this is Mike. So that's kind of a displaced effort, potentially unintended consequence.
Yeah, or intended, right? We're trying to.
Well, yeah.
We're trying to do it. So
Yep.
but I don't want it to be taken out of context and then not be addressed, right? Because we should be rewarded for all of our efforts that we've done. We had limited bags, right? Federally, we had all those limited bags for 20 years, and now the rebuild effort has happened. We're being rewarded with bag limits and depth restrictions being pulled back. So how does that affect some of the MPAs? Right, and what's happening inside those MPAs. We already knew that the fish would be there, that should be bigger. Nobody's touched them. Of course, that's going to happen, but the pressure on the outside is changing.
Got it.
I think to build on that, this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'm just curious if the conversation of, changing boundaries of MPAs and shifting what's allowed is, part of this process, if there's going to be some information regarding that, because as Wayne mentioned, if you draw a line and you focus the efforts along the edge, along the perimeter, you're probably going to see decreased size and quantity of fish because now you've concentrated the angling in that area. So I'm just curious if there's been conversations, if there's data, if there's, if they've explored shifting boundaries of MPAs to change how the pressure is being distributed, rather than just, let's say increase the entire surface area of the MPA, but, maybe open up half of it for a year and then the other half, or just ways to be able to continually get metrics and data to understand, okay, well, if we did open this up for a period of time, how did that then change the data set and then evaluating how that what impact that would have on the periphery of the MPA, where there would be maybe reduced pressure. So just I think it's a really good point that the MPA may look like the star because there's increased pressure. So how do we improve the data to understand what is the human impact and what is the ecological impact?
Perfect. And I think part of that question that you're kind of formulating is one of the things that we are intending to look into were the design recommendations. When the MPAs were originally designed, there were these science guidance, size, habitat, spacing. Part of this report is intended to touch on the design of MPAs themselves. So if you're mentioning changing borders in terms of opening it for a certain time of year or changing it from one year to the next, that is something that's a little bit more likely difficult to chase after, just because of any change to marine protected areas goes through the Fish and Game Commission process, having to make those justifications and go through the notice hearing, discussion hearing, adoption hearing, and then we would just restart the process all over again to then close it for one. Like that would be a little bit more difficult, but part of this report is looking at those MPA design criteria. They were recommended to be a certain size. Are MPAs that are larger performing differently than MPAs that are smaller? Is there a need to shift boundaries, or is there a way to shift a boundary if the data is showing that? And part of this process is one, acknowledging what we do know and then saying what we don't know. And boundaries are very much, we're aware that people want to talk about boundaries, both in the sense of making things larger, smaller. Everybody has an opinion, moving an MPA entirely. But the entirety of our report is just trying to focus on the science of what our data is showing. And then from that, looking to the Fish and Game Commission to take what the report details to then make those further management recommendations into 2023. So boundaries, we're aware, will be a topic of conversation. And so our task would be to address when those MPAs were designed based on the science, what does that science look like now?
Yeah, and I think, Amanda, I'll add that we're working collectively to try and develop a scientific framework to evaluate those kinds of proposed changes. Like if you wanted to change boundaries or expand or decrease an MPA, what specific science and data sets would you need to support or deny that proposal? And so we're trying to get that together to be included in this review, so it's really clear and transparent what the Fish and Game Commission would need to see to make that change.
What about the reverse test? Opening one of the MPAs and then closing something right next to it and testing that theory of, is the MPA really the answer, or is it because of some other factors? How do you test to make sure that the MPAs are really the answer that you're expecting versus another method or a management effort?
Yeah, I think one of the key data sets that will help with that question is the connectivity modeling that's happening. So hopefully we'll get a lot more insight into specific areas that are better sources and sinks that will help determine the strength of influence of an MPA to protecting a certain species or types of species. But that's a great point. And hopefully we'll be able to.
But we go back and say, okay, we've been doing all these management efforts for years, right? How much of it was already in play because of our management efforts? Bag limits, closures, time, area, all those things that we've been doing. So a good example would be, or I think one of the issues that we've raised in the last few years is the warm water blob happened. The kelp died, the starfish died, the abalone died. Withering foot happened, and all of a sudden we got a purple urchin, and now we can't do anything because it's inside of an MPA. What do we do? There's no management there, right? I mean, we couldn't touch it. Nobody's supposed to go in there. It's no take, no touch. So at what point does the management practice have to be put back in place to help Mother Nature back out? We can go back out and plant kelp. We can go and plant urchin. I'm sorry, not the urchin, the starfish or the abalone. You know, when do we help Mother Nature back to get it back on track? That's management efforts.
So many really thoughtful questions, Wayne and others. And yeah, just want to acknowledge that we're wrapping up here in the next minute. And if folks have other things they want to share related to these questions, which were made available on our flyer, please send any comments, questions, concerns to the email that is listed on that flyer. We'll send it around in our main group once again when we get back together. And in the meantime, thanks so much for sharing all of your helpful insight and really making this community meeting a meaningful space to share all of your priorities. Right.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jocelyn, for taking notes. And we were concerned that we might have a quiet room. And so I'm grateful to hear all of the feedback and contributions. I really appreciate everybody's input, because getting to hear from everybody as much as possible to contribute to this report helps to make sure that this report is something that you would actually want to look at and read. And the more input that we receive from you, the better responsive we can be to making sure that you see the information you're interested in. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
Thank you guys.
Could I give one last comment that some of you guys touched on of the impact of the MPAs towards certain species? I think that would be great information, because that would help us know like kind of what the hope and goal is in certain areas. Because, you know, I like to dive in some of the MPAs, so it's nice to go explore and see, and then, you know, I would know what I should be looking for while I'm in a particular zone.
Perfect. Thank you, Nathan.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop my share. Here we all are together. And I believe, oh, okay, so we do have the 1 minute left now. So sorry for pausing us early. Any other last thoughts as we have
one
our,
last comment.
please,
One last comment.
please,
That
Wayne.
there's been this idea that it's an unfair comparison of MPA to everything else, because the MPAs grab the best fishing and habitat areas within the state. So how do you compare the best areas to other less desirable areas, habitat wise, environment wise? So you know, that's always come up from the beginning back in 10 years ago or longer. So.
Okay, I'm typing that in the same notes here. So how to compare those MPA areas with other.
Is it a fair comparison?
Is it a fair comparison? Right.
Is it a fair comparison knowing that the MPAs grab the best habitat, environmental, and, you know, fishing areas in the state? The 15%, which is 50% of us, of our areas. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Wayne.
Good comment.
Perfect. Thank